This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Mike Sedita.
Welcome to the Good Neighbor Podcast presented by 16W Media Group. I'm your host, Mike Sedita, and today we are joined by the founder of Steps to Leadership, Josh Green. Josh, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Mike. Thanks for having me.
So glad to have you on. I'm looking forward to learning about Steps to Leadership. Let me give you just a quick cliff notes on the Good Neighbor Podcast. We have been around since 2020 during COVID, when everybody had to be socially distant and brands couldn't get their information out into the community. And since 2020, we've grown into a national brand. There's Good Neighbor Podcasts in Denver, Philadelphia, Atlanta. I'm here in Tampa. I get to talk to folks like you. So tell us a little bit right out of the gate, what is Steps to Leadership?
Yeah, Mike, thanks for the opportunity to be on this. And anytime I get to share what I do with people and really change lives, that's what I love to do. So my journey started almost 2 decades ago now, when I got my first promotion to management, and I was working at a tech company. And I remember I was so excited when I got that promotion. But what I didn't realize at the time, and it would take me years to find out, is that I went from being really good at something, which was being the individual contributor. You know, I was delivering to customers and I was really good at it, and I got a promotion. And then all of a sudden I realized I'm not very good at management. I didn't get promoted because I was a good manager, but I got promoted to management. And so it took me years to kind of stumble through that and find, you know, the art of how to be a good leader. And so that's my passion in life now, is really to help other managers, whether they're brand new or they're experienced, get there a lot faster than I did.
You know, it is an awkward transition sometimes. I know for me, in that same scenario, like working in an organization where I was one of the, you know, the processors or administrators or whatever it was, and then getting promoted to a management position, and now having to oversee who were my peers previously, and now having to kind of guide is a loose term, but having to be able to oversee what they're doing. And the weirdest part for me in that was, like, the guy who trained me to do my job, now I'm his manager, and he taught me all these shortcuts and tricks and how to circumvent the system. But now I was management, and I knew all the stuff that he was doing. It was tense, awkward, to say the least. So that's a weird transition. And I always found, for me, going into an organization after I had been in leadership, I found what worked for me. And again, I haven't been in a corporate setting since 2009-ish, when the market crashed. I always found going in that it was better to go in almost heavy or like hard with people than to go in like everybody's buddy, because it was easier to come off the throttle managing folks than it was. Like, I could always come off the throttle and be like, hey, you guys are doing a great job, and then give encouragement and make it like more of a more personal relationship in the beginning. Then if I came in as everybody's buddy, I kind of got walked over a little bit more. So it was finding that line. And one of the hardest management positions I had was, I went from being in an organization that everything was under one umbrella, all the different tiers of management, the hierarchy, to then working in an outsourcing model where I was the head of corporate in this one organization, but I had to manage teams at other organizations that had their own internal hierarchy. So having a tool like Steps to Leadership, it's definitely something that's needed out there to get people into the right mindset. What is the model in which you do things? Is it one-to-one? Are you bringing in groups of people and doing kind of seminar training? How do you operate?
Yeah, so everybody's journey is so unique, like you just described, right?
Yeah.
And so there's not a one model fits all. And so I deliver that same approach on how I help leaders. So I travel around the country. I do public speaking. I do them in large forums for groups that will, you know, that can use that. I do have corporations that'll hire me for more private, individual, small leadership, you know, mentoring sessions. I also have one-on-one mentoring sessions on a regular basis with executives. So I'm trying to find people where they are in their career path and where maybe they've got some frustration, right? Mike, kind of like you said, you know, not only your journey to get to leadership is something, but also when you were there, all the stresses are pretty similar. Everyone gets stressed out with a work-life balance. Everyone gets stressed out on, like you said, how to be a boss, but also really empathetic and caring about your teams and making sure that you to them, and it's not about you, that it is about them, and it's about the customers in the end. Everyone wants another promotion. Everyone wants more raises. The
corporate ladder doesn't stop, right?
Exactly, right. So everyone's worried about being laid off or not getting enough something, and especially in management, middle management is probably one of the hardest jobs as well, right? You've got stress from up above. Your boss wants you to do more with less, and your people are expecting you to deliver to them more when you're not being fed from, probably the bright budget buckets in the first place. So the journeys can be all over the place, but what I do is I take it back to the three core things. I call them the three whys. I say, focus on you first. That's my first one.
Okay.
You know why you're in management. If you don't know why you're leading these teams, you're not going to really figure anything else out, right? What's driving you to be there? Are you there because you just got promoted and kind of fumbled into this role, and that's what you were told was the next thing in your career?
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that, but let's take a moment to really digest that, right? You really got to get to the you part of it, right? Then I say focus on your team. So to your comment of, am I a friend with them? But do you even know why your teams are also doing what they do, right? What is driving them? Is it they want the status? Do they want the money? Do they want the title? What is it that's driving them? And you could have, dozens or hundreds of people underneath of you and your team, and you need to understand what they're doing. And then the third why is your customers. Why are all of you even getting paid, and how do your customers make money off of being in a relationship with you? And there's so many people that really don't ever get to that layer of understanding of why they have a job. They just think it's coming in for some unknown reason. So those are the three whys I like to focus on. And I've got an extensive program that can help people through that. And again, depending on where they're at in their journey, I can help them with them.
And I mean, all three of those whys are important, but in my experience, as I worked in financial services in my corporate, life, the third one of your whys to me was always the most important one. Like the customer drives everything, and understanding, like I used to have this conversation with people and talking from a management standpoint, my ex-wife became a manager. And in the role she was originally in, she knew how everybody did every task right down the line because she grew up in that department. And then at one point, she switched over to another group because she had done so well that they said, hey, we're going to move you to this other area and manage a whole new team. And her biggest fear was always, well, I don't understand the functionality beneath me. How am I going to be able to manage people if I don't know what they're like, every nuance to what they do is? And I think that's one of the things people in management struggle with. I mean, I love what you said. I mean, look, a lot of people don't know. They're in management because they said, hey, you've performed the best at task A. We're going to move you to task B. And they go into it thinking, hey, I'm the boss, and don't realize now you're part babysitter, you're part therapist, you're part, note taker. And then you're also taking shrapnel from senior management who says you need to cut budget, you need to produce more. So it is the middle management, the worst.
Tough,
but how I'm assuming you have techniques that kind of drive down in each one of those whys.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So depending on which area that we're trying to focus on and which one of those whys, we're going to have different exercises to go through in that. And to your point of the customer, it's almost like that's advanced stage 3 for people, right? Most people they apply to a job on whatever the website is, and they get a job, and then they learn about the customers eventually, if ever. And so you're right. When you hit that next level, you want to be a good leader, but you want to go up in the chain. If you ever want to be a C something in an organization, you don't get there just because you're good at making widgets. You do it because you understand how the customers are paying you, why they're paying you, and how the value comes and the success that those customers are receiving from you, from having a relationship with you. And that's where a lot of, just individual contributors kind of get stuck and never move into management. But if you're in management, you really got to focus on that. But to your point, you are the shield and you are the therapist for everyone while you're also
Yep.
trying to figure the customers out. So it is, anybody who's in management needs to get an extra pat on the back. I think we deserve a holiday in general just for
It's called Sunday, and it happens 52 times a year, and it's always the worst by 5 o'clock because you got to get up the next morning. I'll tell you, man, my corporate gig, I worked in a call center. Okay, it was literally adult babysitting. We had everybody from kids fresh out of their fraternity 3 months ago who still thought they were living in a frat house and acted accordingly, to people that were kind of on the back nine of their career and were just looking to fill a seat. But it was like, Mike, Josh's radio is too loud. Can you tell him to lower it? And I'm like, you're an adult. Like, you should be able to have that conversation. But I had to be that referee for those people. And one of the biggest things that I found to get them to understand the customer. So I was in an annuity call center. So the average age of the people calling was late 60s to 80s. And listen, when you're in a call center and it's 3,500 calls a day and you are just literally on talk time all day, it can wear you out. There's a burnout to it. And you get short with people and all that stuff. And sometimes the customer's always right, but they're not always nice about being right. So having to get the visual of saying to this rep, listen, pretend it's your grandmother on the phone who's calling to find out about her savings that she's been saving for 30 years, and look at it from that perspective. And maybe you'll be a little bit more patient and a little bit more tactful with that person. But it is hard to get to that level. And then the other big thing, which you probably deal with a lot with your management folks, is understanding metrics. Everything is metrics driven. People don't just manage by the seat of their pants anymore. It's a whole new world of workflows and management and all that stuff. So do you run into, do you get the guys that come to you and say, man, I don't know what to do. Like, I've been in this role for 3 months. This is my problems. And kind of guide them through step by step?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the key to some of the items you just threw up there come down to core relationships, right? So as a manager, you need to have the relationships, of course, with your teams. You need to have the relationships with your boss so that you can manage up, because again, that's another one of your customers is your boss. You've got to manage up.
Yep.
You also need to remember that there's other people in the organization that if you have key relationships with and you set those seeds and you nourish that, it'll help you in so many different ways. I'll give you an example. HR and finance, I think, are two people. Now, it depends if you're already in one of those teams. But if you don't have relationships with those specific teams, you are going to struggle as a leader for how you grow or expand your teams, because having a one-on-one regularly with those and having an advocate in those organizations will make it so that you've kind of greased the skids a little bit for when you say, hey, I need to expand my organization, or I can prove that an investment of X will deliver more value of Y to my customers. And that's a conversation that most leaders just wait to have with their boss. But the real magic there is if you have those relationships with someone in HR already, and you've had that one-on-one conversation, that coffee time, that, and it could be virtual as well, whatever you need. But if you have those conversations with somebody in finance, somebody with HR, they'll also feed you back where you might hit some resistance that you weren't sure of. You don't know that this quarter the company wasn't doing so well, or the numbers are coming in a little bit shy, or you have another acquisition around the corner. There's all kinds of different information you can really get, and having relationships with everybody in the organization. I don't mean each individual person, but every team in the organization. There's some key relationships that will help out a lot.
Well, that's the toughest thing in a corporate environment, from my perspective, being out of it for 15 years, right? You want to bring stakeholders into the mix, because the more stakeholders that are in the mix, more people are invested in the things you got going on. It has a better chance for success on column A. But then on column B, you're in a corporate environment. So there is also a lot of corporate politicking that goes on, and am I overextending my neck a little bit and kind of getting exposed where I can get chopped? So key stakeholders important, making sure they're the right stakeholders that are are going to buy into what you're doing is equally as important. Do you get into this? I mean, you kind of touched on it really quickly in the beginning. Like you had this experience of 20 years of doing all this stuff. Is there an event that occurs? Like, are you in a corporate setting where you're like, you know what, I'm kind of hit my point here where I want to tap out? And how do I take all this experience and leverage it? Like, how do you get to steps to leadership where you're at now? You know, I mean, like, is there a triggering event, or is it over a period of time?
You know, I think it's kind of a frog boiling in water type of scenario. I think that a lot of leaders, again, my journey,
time to jump.
People I've mentored, right? It's very similar. Is again, you're good at something, so you get a promotion, and there's a lot of individual contributor promotions. Then all of a sudden, you hit a management promotion, but again, it's no longer about you. It's about everyone else now.
Right.
And so you have to take some time to usually get through that. But you're the type of person that got to that point. You're the type of person that wants to thrive, that wants to do well, that wants to show well, that wants to network, because you've already gotten to this point in your career. So you continue to try, and you're going to have struggles and successes all through that. And to get to the core of your question, I do think the people that I've talked to, especially in the last 18 months or so, they just wake up one day going, I don't know if I want to manage people anymore. This is what everyone is asking for, just too much. Maybe I should reset, you know, and they want to go to individual contributor. But guess what? You're kind of stuck now. Your resume stuck. You can't go back to being
the choir, brother. You know it.
Right?
Listen,
John, nobody will hire you. You're overqualified for everything else. Right?
And your number's 6 figures now. So I can hire 2 people to listen, dude. When I tell you, I was in a position that I hated, but I was making a certain amount of money. And I didn't have the guts to go, like, listen, I talk to entrepreneurs on this podcast every week. And when they tell me, you know what, I just had enough, the water was boiling and I jumped and I said, the heck with it, and I'm going to go. I am in such admiration of that human being, because I'm a giant baby. Like, I got a mortgage, I got a car payment, I'm making 6 figures. I hate this. Every day I wake up for work and I'm like, what am I doing with my life? What am I going to accomplish in my life doing this every single day? But I didn't have the guts to do it. And then divine intervention happened, and the real estate market crashed, and all this other stuff went down, and, you know, whatever. But yeah, man, that is exactly it. People are trapped. Like, it's like being underwater on a mortgage. You want to get out, but you just cannot do it.
That's right. That's right. And so that's where I think those are the people, which again, you and I both know, we've been there, and we know a lot of people probably in our personal lives that are there. People are there today, and that's where I can really help out with steps to leadership. I can come in and help someone reset their perspective and really see everyone needs a coach in life, right? Let's talk about that for a little bit. You know, every great player has had a coach that helped them, and it's not because the coach was better at doing the thing that they're coaching. It's because they're an outside perspective. They see things from a different place. That is their job. Right. So that's my job. My job now is to look at someone's role and function and stress and help guide them and say, there are ways to not feel trapped and to not hate your job every day. There are ways that you feel like your team just isn't getting it. I can help you make sure that your teams do get it. And I can help both from an organization perspective as well as in the individual leader perspective. And I love it. I love seeing the light bulbs go off.
I will tell you that for the longest time in my life, you know, making my way through my career and all this other stuff and all the things I do in the community, and I'm involved, and you know the stuff, like, you know where I'm at. For me, I always thought, you know, business coaches or life coaches were people that just couldn't make it. You know, like they bailed, right? That was the thought process, like, full disclosure. Until I found somebody, and it was reshaped to me as almost exactly what you just said. I'm not a business coach. I'm a perspective coach. And all it really was is you're doing something. It's like, look, when you're in something, and people who are listening to this aren't seeing my hands, but you get tunnel vision. This is how I operate, just like the administrator who does a task. They don't care who the customer is. I get a phone call, I answer it, I hit X and move on. Same thing when you're running a business. You kind of get caught in that tunnel vision. Yeah. And that perspective coach just comes in to say, and this is kind of what I'm how I envision what you're talking about is, hey, look, dude, if you just look at it from this perspective and take a different angle and approach, what you're doing is great, but this might open up a whole other, it might take you from tunnel vision to a little bit of the periphery, and then maybe you get full peripheral vision and see the whole playing field. And that's kind of how I reshaped it for me to be able to accept it. And then the big thing is the results. How gratifying is it for you when someone comes through your program? Okay, is it okay to call it a program? I mean, would that be the proper terminology? Someone comes through your program and comes back to you in 6 months and says, man, look, either A, it's changed the game for me and my company and my 3 whys, or B, hey, I've been doing this now a year and now I'm being moved to senior middle management or whatever it is, however the hierarchy is. That's got to be gratifying for you.
Absolutely. Most of my students will stay not only in the initial program that kind of helps them get out of the funk and get to a better place, but we at least will have some sort of recurring communication and mentor sessions as well, because it is one of those, okay, now I'm out of the funk. Now everything's, less stressful, but they still want to grow, right? They still have a target that they want to get to. That target more than likely changed from when they entered the program, because what they really thought they were aiming for is probably different. By the time we exit in the best way possible, but they still want to have a next target. And the same thing is they don't want to get the blinders back on. They don't want tunnel vision, and they want to keep doing it. And so, it is a lot about just perspective. And a lot of it, Mike, is basics, right? And not to oversimplify what I do, but a lot of times you just have to go over and lift up that rock and find the little scary monster and clean it out. Right. And sometimes we're so advanced, right? We've been doing things for decades or whatever, and we forget that, wow,
how it started.
One little domino will really, really shift things. Right. And so a lot of times it's just that. Now, there's also the opposite side of the things where it's the basics are happening and they just can't get over the next threshold or something advanced. We'll tackle that as well. Right. But I would say 80 or 90% of what I help people with is a lot of just basics of management 101, old habits, some things that have just gunked up the system for the years. And that could be true for them and with the relationships that they have with people. As we talked about earlier with relationships, sometimes those relationships get funky, especially in a corporate environment. Politics come into play. Other people got a promotion. You had mentioned earlier where you are now the boss of somebody else. So, all the parts on the chessboard don't stay the same. And so you have to play a different game of chess sometimes. And so it's just a matter of looking at that and again, having that outside perspective.
It is a living, breathing entity, corporate politics. It constantly moves. Not only like becoming a manager and managing your peers, but becoming a manager and the 3 other guys on your team applied for the same job and you got it and they didn't. And how did they react to your new promotion? Listen, man, I've seen all of that. And the one thing that I always think about is if you're not moving forward, you're going backwards. And if you are, you are just literally have to keep moving. And I did a talk on this 2 years ago to a group of people that do magazines like my magazines. And I said, look, you need to be a shark. Sharks never stop moving. Once you stop moving, your career is going to get stale. And if it's getting stale, it's going backwards. So if you need to do it, you need to be a shark and you need to keep moving. Let me ask, we've just talked for almost 30 minutes just on this. I know you have a big family. I know you do a lot of stuff in the community. You got a lot of stuff going on. What do you do for fun when you're not coaching folks?
So definitely spend time. We got 2 beautiful children. Spend time with them for sure. What else do we do? Concerts. I love music, sports events. We're a big Lightning fan. We're season ticket holders of the Lightning. So I would say music and hockey is how I decompress myself for sure.
Really? So what about you do a lot of vacations, you foodies. Where are you guys? Are you in Wesley Chapel?
I am in Wesley Chapel. Yeah. I definitely love food. I have had Wesley Chapel Eats for quite a while as well. Probably a different talk for us to have on a different podcast. But I love anything that involves helping local people. And you had mentioned COVID earlier. When COVID hit, the only thing I cared about on social media was where can I get the food and the drinks from, right? And so I didn't care about everybody's political opinion. I didn't care about where the snakes were, and I don't care about who has power or not that day. I just want to know where the food was. And so that's where I focused a lot of my effort.
Well, listen, I have been trying for now, I think it's 3 years. I kind of gave up for a while to get you to create content for Wiregrass Living Magazine or any of my other 3 magazines to do a food article. We have, look, I'm always looking for people in the community that are the grassroots. That what makes what I do successful is people who live in the communities, who are involved and know the little the little spot, the food truck down the street that nobody knows about or whatever it is. So here in broadcast, I'm going to invite you again whenever you want to start creating some content. We would love to have you. As we're growing now, 16W Media Group, we have all these different outlets that we get involved in. It's not just the magazines, it's Facebook, it's Google, it's Instagram, it's a whole huge platform. So whenever you're ready to come on board, we love to have people from the community involved in what we're doing. So that's my extension of the offer. As we start to wrap this up, I need to know, I am a mid-level manager or I just got promoted. How do I get into the program?
Yeah, visit my website, stepstoleadership.com. Let's set up a strategy call. There's no obligation, no cost. I just want to make sure that we're setting you up for what you need, and let's discuss where you're at, and let's see if we have a fit. So stepstoleadership.com. We'll go from there.
And is there a fill out form on there? I just kind of plug in my name, my email, all that stuff.
Simple form. That's it. Name, email, address. You can schedule the meeting right there on the website, and we'll talk within days.
So, folks, if you're listening to this or watching it on our YouTube channel, listen, I've been in corporate America. I totally understand, but the landscape is always changing. Corporate America used to be you got up, you went to a job, and you sat there. Now, as a manager, you sometimes are managing people that are all over the country that you never see. You never go into a meeting with. You're doing a Zoom meeting. That's your interaction. There's nuance to it. Let an expert who knows how to guide you through your management journey help you. Go to stepstoleadership.com. Josh is in our communities. I know him. I've seen him. I've seen him on magazine covers in Wesley Chapel. He's a part of the community. Josh, thank you for being a good neighbor. Thank you for being on the Good Neighbor podcast, man. I appreciate your time.
Mike, thank you as well. This is great.
Thanks for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast Passcode. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnppasscode.com. That's gnppasscode.com or call 813-922-3610.